Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to take a look at a value exercise for you guys. It's creating a value scale and a sphere. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm just kind of laying out the value scale, and I'm doing this at the bottom of the paper. At the bottom of the paper, you want it to have like a real long rectangle. What we're going to do is we're going to put 10 different values in this value scale. Now, as we go with the value scale, we can do it freehand or you can use a ruler at the bottom. But once you have everything kind of laid out, then put little marks across the top that just kind of give you guys an idea of how far apart to put your blocks. Once you have it all evened out to where you actually will have 10 blocks, then go ahead and put in vertical lines. Okay, once you have all your vertical lines in, then you'll begin to want to start adding value. And for your first value, your zero value, there's nothing that goes in there. But in the second value, or what we have as far as number one, we want to put our first value, and our first value is going to be really, really light. You're barely even going to have the pencil touch the paper. And you're going to go in a hatching motion all in one direction. From this point, we're going to move on to the very farthest value, which is our number 9, and we're going to start adding value there. As we add the value, of course, we're going to put more pressure on the pencil, and as we put more pressure on the pencil, we're going to get a darker value. But not only on top of pressure, we also want to use what's a technique called cross-hatching, and that's when we work in both directions. We can work in a diagonal direction and then go into a horizontal and a vertical direction as well, until we get just about as dark a value that we can make with the type of pencil that we have. They do make darker pencils, but for right now, the only one that you're going to be using is this number 2 pencil, just your plain old number 2 pencil. It should have a number 2 on top. They don't make as dark a value as what we would have like if we were using a 6B or a real soft pencil, but they do work. Now we're going to go back down to our number 2 value, and we're going to start adding it, and we're going to make it a little bit darker. Using the same motion, the hatch shading, and just very gradually add a little bit more pressure. Also, guys, at this point, we want to be very careful, and we want to use deliberate strokes. We're not scribbling, we are shading, and you want to be very careful when you do that. Now, slide back down to your darkest value, and we're going to go on to our number 8. And with this one, we're going to make it just a little bit lighter than we did our 9. Again, we're using cross-hatch shading to where you shade and then you cross it in another direction, and that allows us to get pretty dark. Remember now, we're going to make this just a little bit lighter than our 9. Again, careful, deliberate shading. Try to be as careful and deliberate as you can as you're shading. You're not scribbling, you're shading. Okay, at this point, what I'm doing is I just put this on time lapse. Now, this is about 10 times faster, so just kind of gives you an idea. Here now is the spheres that we're going to do. This is the first one right here. This is just a photograph of it, which will be in your Schoology. You can open it up in your Schoology. I want you to notice the shape and where it is going to touch as far as the paper that it's sitting on, its ground plane. We're going to go ahead and very lightly sketch in those angles that I showed you in the previous video. And very, very light. We want to make this super, super light just so you can see it. Some people, one of the biggest problems that people have when they begin drawing is they want to draw these lines too dark. You don't want to draw too dark because if you do make a mistake, it's hard to erase. If you also, to make them too dark, you're going to see a line, and there's really no line there. There's just an edge, and that's one of the keys. That's one of the things, an objective that we have, is we want to lose the line and create an edge, and you'll hear me refer to that quite often. Notice where the lines are as far as that corner paper. I have this sphere sitting on a paper, and it's one of the things that can help us draw it accurately. Also notice I am drawing the paper that it's sitting on. I'm just not drawing a sphere that's floating. It's actually sitting on something. Now I have a very basic shape drawn. I'm going to have to come in there and do a little bit of erasing after I tighten these lines up. Here's another thing, the reason you want to draw light is because when you erase, you don't want a ghost image behind. You want it to be to where that line disappears completely. So make sure at this point you're drawing your lines very, very light. Notice the values too, as far as my value scale. You're looking at a very, very light value at the top where the light is striking it, and then it's a little bit darker at the edge. Also notice the background is very dark as well. Tighten these lines up a little bit more. Pretty happy with the contour drawing, so I'm going to begin shading. At this point, I'm using hatch shading, very careful, very deliberate. I'm hardly putting any pressure on the pencil at all. Actually, the pencil is sitting so light in my hand that I'm just using the weight of the pencil, which is really, really light, to create these values. I'm moving in one direction and I'm keeping it super light, because if you remember that photograph that I had, it was really light near the top because the light source is coming from the top left. Moving in one direction, we're not scribbling, we're shading. Moving in one direction. Very careful, very deliberate. Now, when I get to the edge there, it might go outside my contour line, but that's okay, because what's going to happen is I'm going to be putting value in the back. Make sure, too, that you make reference to your photocopy or the copy from Schoology that I have downloaded or uploaded for you guys. You need to make sure you go back to that as a reference. Too many times I've seen students just look at it one time and then try to draw the whole thing. Drawing accurately is about as much about looking as it is about drawing and shading. Okay, now I'm going to go into time-lapse mode. This entire process of shading just a sphere alone took me about 20 minutes. Notice too that as I'm getting darker, I'm also cross-hatching. I'm making reference to my image a number of times. Now I'm putting in the cast shadow. You want to make sure that you put that in there as well, and that it has a soft edge, because around the corners or around the edge of that cast shadow, it's a little bit blended out. Now I'm putting in my background, and again, this is the darkest value, so I'm going to use crosshatch shading. Also, notice since I started shading in the background, there are no longer any lines. Those real light lines have all disappeared. Now we're back here to normal speed, and I just want to tighten some things up. Again, I'm cross-hatching to get a pretty dark value, and I'm going to let them blend out a little bit as well. Tightening things up. Make reference to the photocopy, to your subject matter as much as you can. Again, all we're doing here is tightening these things up. After you're done with this assignment, you want to photograph it. Make sure you get a real good photograph of it. Fill the frame of the camera up with it. And then save it and make sure you submit it to Schoology for a grade. This is value scale and sphere shading. Y'all have a good day. Bye now.